The only game that stands a fraction of a chance of being able to beat Call of Duty is Call of Duty. If anyone's going to tear this franchise apart limb from limb, they're just going to have to do it themselves. For nearly 2 decades, Call of Duty has dominated gaming culture with consistent yearly releases, cultural touchstones like zombies and Nuketown, and an ecosystem that keeps casuals and diehards completely hooked. If that ecosystem falters, it will be no fault of Ubisoft or Electronic Arts, or anyone else poised to take the crown. It'll be because COD itself lost the crown in a gutter while stumbling home drunk after gambling away my college fund. I hate you, Dad. XDefiant, the latest in a long stream of COD clones, is due to shut down sometime in 2025. That hurts. XDefiant is arguably a better made game foundationally speaking than even Black Ops 6, and a game I rather enjoyed the time that I put into. Talk to anyone who's played COD this year, and the #1 complaint that you'll hear from anyone with at least 2 brain cells to rub against each other will say that while the game is foundationally very fun, the maps are easily some of the worst Treyarch has ever produced in its entire tenure as a COD developer. In fact, there's a lot of things about this year's COD that come off a lot like a dev team that just haven't really played their own game, as opposed to XDefiant, which seemingly doesn't suffer from this at all. Sure, its hero shooter mechanics feel shoehorned in and a bit flaccid, but they ultimately feel balanced and fair to unbelievably broken and overpowered depending on the player using them and the context that they're in. This is good design. This is fun gameplay. Identifying what broken and stupid looks like and allowing players to flirt with the notion without ruining the fun for everyone else is important to establishing good power play and not making a game feel like a tedious, unbalanced mess, like noob tubing does, or Ninja Perk, or Loud Footsteps. Broken UAVs, pay-to-win blackout skin. Do you guys even play your own game? Even community feedback to the game has been incredible. Mark Rubin, former Call of Duty hotshot, did a spectacular job of maintaining objectivity and candid conversations with his community on Twitter, seemingly striving to make everyone involved with XDefiant know their role in making the ultimate COD killer. XDefiant was seemingly righting wrongs that Activision were fundamentally incapable of addressing, while also demonstrably going above and beyond the Medal of Honor? No. Oh, no, I got it wrong. I got it wrong. It was right. But I walked away. I think everyone did. There was a period of time in which anti-Call of Duty sentiment was at its most vocal, and they missed their window of opportunity to have any real pull in terms of the Call of Duty market share. Releasing the same year a Treyarch Call of Duty was set to launch, arguably their strongest studio, working on their strongest property, following 2 years of back-to-back highly criticized entries, was just bound to be a failure. Yet, here we are. XDefiant is done, and while I do feel sad about that fact, I can't imagine why Ubisoft would have thought this would have gone any way differently. Modern Warfare 2, which released back in 2022, was a major hit to fan expectations. And another example of Infinity Ward, the franchise founding studio, being kinda pompous and disrespectful to fans and their sensibilities. Whenever fan feedback needed responding, Infinity Ward would, more often than not, bury their heads in the sand or double down on the game being and playing as it does because they feel some artistic kinship to the game's integrity. The game with Snoop Dogg and Nicki Minaj skins feels it imperative to make sure that they don't lose the original designer's integrity. That's the fresh, bold taste of falsehoods, baby. In fact, Infinity Ward is the majority reason why everybody hated MW3. MW3 was majority developed by Sledgehammer Games, true, but it was guided heavily both narratively and direction-wise by Infinity Ward because it's their property and their designs. This meant that widely disliked features like the overbloated gunsmith system and general gameplay pace were adopted for all modes in MW3, at least initially. MW3 really felt like Activision finally giving fans everything they wanted from MW2 since they didn't have enough time or interest in developing a proper full-fledged new entry. They effectively sold people on the same game twice, except the first time was through an expectation of quality considering that Modern Warfare 2, historically, is one of the most beloved games in the series, and the second time was based on righting wrongs they had full control to change the entire time, but simply waited to take action on to best sell the glorified expansion that was MW3. From what I heard, MW3 is some of the most fun multiplayer we've ever had in the entire franchise. And for those who bought into it, I hope you had a good time. Full stop. I hope you enjoyed the game. I couldn't get into it personally because I'd played MW2 and soured on basically the entire studio that is Infinity Ward effectively forever. Now I bring this up because it was during this window of time when talks of XDefiant were at their peak. Everyone expected this game to effectively take over COD's reign, since it felt like a wildcard option since it was headed by a former COD veteran, as well as just being free to play. No entry fee, a pedigree, and a competing gaming juggernaut funding the whole thing. But it never came out. We never saw this game aside from knowing that it existed. Maybe a beta here and there in order to test features or some general gameplay directives and whatnot. XDefiant was originally revealed back in 2021, and we didn't get that damn game until this year. Mourning XDefiant aside, why does this keep happening? It seems like every year we hype up a title to take away market share from Activision, and every year the game just flops. Is Call of Duty as a brand just too sturdy and too culturally integrated in order to be toppled over? I think so, yeah. Much like Xbox admitting losing the 8th generation of consoles, to the non-turbo nerds out there, that was the Xbox One and PS4 era, was the biggest failure they could have made, since getting people married into an ecosystem effectively makes ecosystem hopping costly, inconvenient, and a waste of energy. Call of Duty has had plenty of chips in their armor rife for exploitation, but they've done the smartest thing they could have possibly ever done. Double down on nostalgia. Ghost, Soap, Price, the Ray Gun, Nuketown, etc. have reintroduced nostalgia to both old-time fans who will commemorate the heyday of Call of Duty, you know, back when they were quality expressions of game design and not copy and paste FIFA games, while selling kids on a nostalgia they don't have but pretend they do to fit in with the older halves of the game sphere. Game culture is storied and built on gatekeeping. If you don't know every Zelda game or have played every classic 360 era juggernaut, you're a fake fan or a dork. It's super prevalent in gaming spheres, but it exists in most media subcultures today. You don't want to be the dork that says, I love Modern Warfare, while an old head tells you don't know a damn thing about Call of Duty because you never played the original games. I bring this up because things that serve as nostalgia bait for one generation can self-ingratiate as nostalgia bait for a new generation, despite having none of the qualities that made the original interpretation or depiction great. Ghost was badass because he wasn't this hunky, mysterious, detail-rich character that you learned to fall in love with. He was a dude with a skull beanie and everybody thought he was cool as hell. When he dies at the end of MW2, you acknowledge, oh no, skull beanie guy died, rip in peace, and remember him as such, and pay extra attention to him in subsequent playthroughs or when having discourse about the game's campaign. Now he's this walking, talking military meme that everybody loves because he represents things the original devs just didn't have to say about him. It's reframed nostalgia to double down on a zeitgeist that once existed while baiting a younger generation eager to not miss out to also adopt these icons as symbols of the series and important to the broader image of Call of Duty. So why is that important? Because Call of Duty kind of had an icon problem for a really long time there. Much like PUBG, you didn't have much in the way of symbolism to iconically refer to the title due to muted brand recognition outside of cover art and logo designs. This symbology issue means that hanging onto a property as iconic is very difficult unless you happen to be the juggernaut of said property. COD was that for a decade, but their broad popularity was absolutely waning. Titles like Advanced Warfare, World War II, or Infinite Warfare, while loved by diehards, represented a shift in interest away from Call of Duty as a property. Cooler stuff was dropping, and Call of Duty just wasn't changing. The shift towards rebooting their franchises was a calculated move done to re-inspire older consumers to carry the torch of a series they once loved, and a Hail Mary in making a way forward for the franchise that was seemingly suffering under the weight of having no definable symbology or characterization. What I'm sure they couldn't have predicted was being able to use nostalgia as a tool to introduce younger audiences into Call of Duty. Nostalgia doesn't work that way. And look, maybe you think I'm being hyperbolic, speculative, and maybe even a little conspiratorial. You'd be right. They made a big, free, fun video game with big tie-in properties that worked as an alternative to the very adolescent Fortnite, working in a genre that was widely underdeveloped as a whole. I remember DayZ when it first dropped, and I'd wondered why EA, Activision, Sony, Microsoft, nobody was making a big open game like this when all of the constituents of the genre were like these scruffy small indie games with a fraction of the dev power and resources of a AAA studio. There was no milsim Fortnite, so Activision swooped in, and took the spot. Rest in peace, PUBG. Maybe next time hire better artists that are better at cosmetics than legendary red t-shirt number 12. Warzone has given kids who potentially can't afford access to the latest and greatest Call of Duty the ability to play an open world version of the game with all the bells and whistles the main game might have, with smaller transactions they can ask their parents for, further embroiling them into an ecosystem of play where they only really have Fortnite or Warzone to choose from. This, combined with nostalgia bait and Warzone availability, opened doors for Call of Duty to a younger audience base as a whole. In fact, I'd argue that this might be the strongest Call of Duty has been in its entire lifetime as a franchise. It's created its own Kratos or Master Chief, simply by re-establishing iconic B characters that all of the old fans remember, but never really saw as all that deep, or people who never knew who they were, but are dead set on convincing you that they do. So returning to the prompt, why can't anyone truly be a COD killer? Because every time there's a moment of weakness for this franchise, everybody else is playing follow the leader and lemmingzing themselves off of a cliff face and killing their property. If Ubisoft wanted XDefiant to succeed, they needed to stop being Ubisoft. That's not fair. I know it's not fair. To be fair, it's not fair to be Ubisoft in the first place. If Ubisoft wanted XDefiant to succeed, they'd be fighting an uphill battle working against COD in their Black Ops era. Either you suck it up, support the game as much as you can, and strike when appropriate, or, and here's an idea, release the game during a time in which Call of Duty is hemorrhaging its fan base like a sleep token extra is hemorrhaging from his face. Thanks for watching. How do you feel about the Call of Duty series in light of the release of Black Ops 6? Do you think the series is unstoppable when Treyarch is at the wheel? Or are you like me and just waiting for Activision's greed to kick in, putting Call of Duty back on its back foot? Let me know down below. Subscribe if you liked the video. I've been Arky. This has been my 2 cents. I hope you're keeping alive well. Peace.